welcome to Ask Bishop Zac. We have another marriage question. I hope the singles out there are not getting tired of this. But anyway.
I honestly think we need to work on that.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah. So. Anyway, so the question is, does God recognize customary or civil marriages? Like, for example, after I have a certificate of customary marriage, as a believer, why would I need to go to church?
That's a very, very good question. And I can say that I face that question as somebody passionate for marriages, for family life, for the nature of covenant, lifelong marriage. And so people will ask, and we have a situation in which somebody has done a customary marriage. So if that is an act of marriage, why then do you need to add on top of that? And then I think in the church, we would want to say blessing. Actually, the question is more complicated, Abigail, because when somebody has undertaken a customary marriage and they come to church, we actually conduct a marriage service as though these two people have not gotten married in a customary way. So there is a sense in which the church, my church particularly, does not recognize customary marriages. Okay. That is why, but you see, when people are married or registered by the registrar of marriages, deaths, the registrar, the civil. An interesting thing in my church tradition, the Church of Uganda, they actually will not conduct a marriage service for that couple. Instead, we will conduct a blessing of the marriage. So we bless civil marriages, but we actually don't bless customary marriages. Now, of course, you could ask the same question as to whether God recognizes. I think within the laws of Uganda, they are called Mohammedan marriages, or if the law has changed, I haven't recently checked. Within the Muslim community, in the laws provide for Hindu marriages, and I think actually as well as Baha'i. So there are clear recognition by the state, the regulation provides for all these marriages. The question you're asking, while the state of Uganda recognizes all these marriages, does God recognize them? Yeah. Now, and I think it's a very important question. And why would the church, and I think what I say about Church of Uganda is possibly true about all the other church Christian traditions in Uganda. Why would the church not recognize customary marriages, but recognize civil, and then bless civil unions? And by the way, it's not all civil unions that the church blesses. Okay. There are civil unions that the church will not bless. So that too gets very complicated. Now, and I think it's really to understand what marriage is all about. That's where we must go. Marriage is a social institution. It's about society. It's about how societies cohere, how societies are organized. So, for example, the whole process of children, new life, new beings in society cannot just be left to chance. It is regulated by society. And marriage is that way in which that happens. So every social, cultural community has a way in which it regulates. So marriage in that sense is a social responsibility. Therefore, the individuals who seek these relationships must be socially accountable to the communities of which they could say we belong. This is a primary community that defines who I am in the world. We can't deny that the way societies are organized today is in states, countries and states. Therefore, the first is that the states regulate. So to fulfill the obligations of the state, of the particular country of which you are domiciled, hence the regulation by the state of marriages in general. So the state recognizes a number of marriages. In Uganda, I've already mentioned customary, church or Christian, Muslim, Mohammedan, Hindu, I think Baha'i, and I think there is a sixth one I have forgotten. Anyway, those that are within the laws of Uganda. So that means you must be married according to the laws of Uganda. Number two, you have to fulfill the obligations of the ethnic, cultural community of which you are a part. If you are part of Uganda society, you fulfill the obligations, the rituals and traditions of Uganda society. If you are, I could speak as a Mufumbira, the traditions. And so that is the customary. You fulfill, because whether you like it or not, you belong to a particular line into the world. You are not. Now, and this is where the whole European culture has really come upon us and confused that marriage and the way it is done, the white dress and so on. Let's simply admit that that is an imported culture. Now, that imported culture, unfortunately, has come to be associated with church. But the significant thing in the third, therefore, is to say, since you say you're a member of a body that calls itself Christian, a religious community, a community of faith, actually better still, a community of faith, you therefore need to fulfill the obligations of that community. You must be accepted. Let's put it this way. You need the blessing of the state in order to say you're married. You need the blessing of your cultural community, therefore customary marriage. But you also need the blessing of your faith community. And there is a sense in which you are not properly married until you fulfilled everything that pertains. Now, if you have abandoned, if you do not say, I don't really care about faith, don't come to church. I can still remember a young man came to me with a young woman and they said they are atheists and they wanted me to wed them. I said, why bother? Go to the civil registry and it's done and it will be recognized. You see, all of these structures of society are a fact of creation. And who is the creator? It's a wonderful, wonderful verse, a really wonderful statement by the psalmist. The earth is the Lord's and all. So all of this is of God, is of the Lord. The way societies structure themselves. So the question really has to be, have you fulfilled the requirements, the obligations of where you belong? You are, Mufumbira, you are a Ugandan, you are a believer, you belong to Christ. I actually prefer to talk about belonging to Christ even rather than just talking about believer. That means, therefore, you should fulfill. One of the things I've actually longed for, and this has been going on too long, is that I wish, just like in the church, we have two things happening in one. Because in church, you fulfill the obligations of the state, because we register you. When you're getting married, the church actually registers you on behalf of the state. That's one. But actually, in the same church ceremony, the church registers you. So there are two registrations happening. Let me clarify here and really explain. The church does not wed people, marry people on behalf of the state. No. Yes, the church registers people on behalf of the state, but that's not all. That's only one part. The second part is that actually the church registers marriages. It registers Christian marriages. So that's what happens. How I wish that the customary, for those who say they belong to Christ, they belong to a faith community, all that could be concluded. I do a lot of kuhinjira, a lot of bukwa and so on. And sometimes I wish that's the moment when everything would happen. Done, In which case, when this thing was happening here for you, I wish they had declared this place, licensed it. So at the end, Timothy, everything is concluded. Just like we conclude everything in church. Why can't we conclude everything in one spot? And I think that's where we need to go, so that we stop confusing people about this is a marriage, because you're one person with many identities, and those identities actually are critical for the marriage relationship. Sorry, that was going on forever.
Well, no, but I think that explanation was really, really relevant. I don't think there's enough information about those details that we come across often, so I think for many of the people listening, it will be really valuable.
And it really needs to be understood, because, you know, in your generation, Abigail, there are some who say we belong to the faith community, but as soon as they get a customary marriage certificate from the kingdom, whether it's the kingdom of Uganda or Bunyoro or Toro, they then say we are done, we are married. They go and start sleeping together. And I'm like, please, you can't. You have not yet got the blessing of the church. So you need the blessing of the state, the blessing of the church, and the blessing of your customary community in order for you to say, now you have the blessing.
Especially if you say you are part of that
You're part of all that.
and of all those communities.
But if you are just a citizen of the country and you have not belonged to a state community, if you know, or if you just don't have a cultural community that you need to be accountable to, then the civil wedding is enough.
So the accountability piece is also
absolutely.
Really
it's the critical thing. It's to who do you belong primarily? Who are you accountable to? And I think it's important to say to people, we need to be accountable to the wider society. And marriage is that way of accountability.
Marriage is not just, you know, the two of you. It's the society.
Not the two of you.
I know. I mean, you know what I mean. Anyway, let's end this. Thank you very much.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.